Well, let's dive in. So ask questions away. We'll be looking at the chat throughout the course of this. So it's always great as well. Just like light up the chat with like where you're dialing in from. Sounds so old, but where you're joining from, and also like what you do. This is a great opportunity for us to all kind of expand our networks, you meet new folk, etc., because we're all here with a shared interest. So yeah, feel free to make the chat active. Three things we're going to cover today. So we're going to start with some data, we'll look at some trends, and then we'll go network by network, looking at all the features. One quick, very small plug is that if you've not tried out Adobe Express, which is what we've been busy building and working on, it's available and entirely free to use. So basically, if you take your favorite content scheduling tool, maybe Hootsuite or Buffer, and smash that together with Canva, it's pretty much what you're going to get on Adobe Express, which is probably, hopefully that should explain it. But obviously, I'm not meant to talk about it in that way, but hey, between us, we'll be all right. So either way, content creation, scheduling, all that stuff, you're all smart people, you get it. So if you want to check it out, you can. Cool. Alrighty, data. So prior warning, these slides look horrible. So you might need to zoom in, take a screenshot, whatever, because essentially I'm taking reports that I find online. So don't blame me if they look horrible. Anyway, because of some new EU regulations, the social media networks now need to report their European audience. So there's lots happening for European social media. You'll know that Threads isn't available across the rest of Europe, and obviously, sadly, UK isn't part of Europe or the EU anymore, but never mind, that's one for another conversation. But what they do need to report, any EU country needs to report user numbers in each of the individual countries within the EU, which then gives us some really interesting data. I told you the slide looks a bit horrible. So we might need to squint at this one. But if we are trying to market outside of UK or US, and we're trying to think about what networks do we want to target if we're looking to target people within certain countries in the EU. So the kind of TLDR, rather than going through all of this, is that it gives us a really interesting look at what TikTok's EU user base looks like, right? Because typically Luan and I are talking about TikTok's user base of like there are over 1 billion monthly active users, and it's all great. But when you start putting a microscope over that, it reveals something very interesting. So you start to see that TikTok's user base is very heavily US centric, right? Because when you start to look at EU, you notice Germany, France actually the highest user of TikTok. Germany follows that, and the other one is Italy. So kind of mainland Europe is where TikTok is strongest. And that kind of like mainland Central Europe is a trend that kind of follows into LinkedIn as well. So I looked at this with some interest. I'm sure you paid some close attention to this as well, and given your expertise in LinkedIn. But it gives us a really interesting perspective. I'd probably look on this column rather than just site visits, because it's this column that's actually more interesting. And you start to see a kind of similar trend where highest usage in France, which is exactly the same situation that we saw on TikTok. And then that's followed by Germany as well. So Germany, France, highest adoption of social media. So as you start to think about this, and maybe if you're targeting audiences inside the European Union, this can give you some ideas as to what networks you might be best placed to use as part of your strategy. Hopefully that helps. I'm going to pause, see if you've got anything to add into this.
I think it's just important to say that most of the data, when we find it and present it, is usually kind of global overviews. And of course, you know, the UK is just a small part, and data can differ by country. So I think that the key is, if you are working globally, you need to check out what's working in those countries and what platforms they're using and the context of how they're using them as well. So, you know, the fact that the data is now available, but also, you know, we're marketers, we probably don't like to get bogged down in this stuff, but understanding what's happening in terms of data regulations and reporting is actually quite key to what's happening in social media. And as we're going to come on to, kind of ad-free options and subscriptions and moving away from advertising, some of that is in part due to data regulations that are changing, that are, you know, prohibiting the platforms making the money in their traditional way through advertising, that they are having to find other income streams, and that the data changing regulations are behind that. So we do need to understand what's happening.
Definitely agree.
Not exciting, but we do.
Yeah, exactly. So either way, we'll continue to report that every single month, and it does provide us some very interesting content to look through, that's for sure. So anyway, there's some data. What about some trends? What are the underlying things that are happening? We've reported this quite a bit, and this is some of the latest data we've seen pertaining to news consumption on social. And I find this, I'm sure you do as well, particularly interesting. The implications here are pretty sizable. So especially when you're thinking about us as businesses and content creation, because it's not just about news, it's about where people are going to in a mindset of being educated, learning new things. So, and it's also helps us understand which networks are the ones that people will go to most frequently to consume new information. And you see those networks that are slightly in decline, that will have implications for the amount of time that people are spending on their networks too. So this isn't just about news, there's a lot of kind of underlying stuff. But unsurprisingly, you'll see a decline that's happening over on X. You know, we don't need to talk about, I think we all got a pretty good understanding as to why that will happen. Facebook, they've been punishing news publishers for a long time, and naturally Facebook content consumption in the feed on Facebook is a diminishing thing. Unsurprisingly, we're seeing that dip. We will talk, and Luan's going to call this out later, about areas where Facebook can be fantastically successful for us gaining reach on the platform, but generally in the feed, news consumption is declining. YouTube staying pretty flat, but of course, you know, we've reported this before. TikTok is the biggest growing platform here, and this isn't just about teens. We're going to talk about teens in the next slide, actually, but this is just overall across demographics. So I find that's got some really interesting implications, because it means that people are changing the platform that they're going to. So Insta and TikTok are the platforms that people are more often going to now to consume news. Consuming news, not from media outlets, but consuming news from people that they trust. So this is where we're starting to move beyond brands, and this trend has been happening since the dawn of social, moving beyond brands into those trusted individuals that we all coalesce around people's viewpoints of that matter. Now, of course, there's a lot of not so good implications of that because of, you know, fake news, trusted news sources, and all that stuff. We're not going to get into kind of that today, but I think when we think about this as marketers, we can start to think about, okay, we know where people are starting to go towards. We know the platforms that are growing, because naturally news consumption is a very intentional activity. People will be spending more time on the platforms. Also, those power of those small communities, power of influencers on those platforms continues to grow. So long narrative from me. Luan, I'm sure you got an interesting take on this too.
I love this chart, really love this chart. But what, you know, my head's starting to go was what I'd like to sit behind it is the pattern of news consumption overall, to see whether social media, or well, we know social media as a channel is where people are going to get news. But if we look at these dates from 2020 to 2023, we were quite all heavy consumers of news in 2020 when we needed to know what was going on and happening on a daily basis. And I don't have the data, but anecdotally, you know, conversations I have with people are that they switch off to the news a bit more now, that they're kind of consuming it less for various reasons of how they feel about the news. So the fact that with some of these platforms they're increasing so significantly, I think if we if we overlaid how much news do you read or consume, we would have some different patterns to share on that one. The one that just caught my eye is because this has come up on some work I've been doing recently with kind of local communities and niche communities, is Nextdoor appearing. And I don't think we've talked about Nextdoor before, around if anyone has access to this around your local community as a platform, that is increasing as well for news. And I think, you know, if we were to, we're not doing it today, but if we were to talk about trends and what's happening and going forward in the future, the word for me, communities and smaller niche areas, I think we'll be maybe talk about Nextdoor next year.
Definitely. Certainly with you on that. I said some teen usage we're going to talk about. Here we go. So even though we've been speaking about the growth of TikTok for the last couple of years, well, definitely the 3 years that we've been doing this, But like anything that grows rapidly, there's going to be a plateau. It doesn't mean it's declining or going away. It's just going to plateau in growth. And TikTok is experiencing that plateau right now. Doesn't mean it's any less important than it was before for our content strategy. But especially if we're targeting teams, of which, Luan, you've always got some interesting takes on this. Let's kind of talk through the implications of what these two charts actually mean. So whilst TikTok has surpassed YouTube in weekly usage for the first time, so we've seen like TikTok versus YouTube for teens being a constant challenge or constant battle, and you see that's pretty much split. You'll notice that TikTok consumption has actually gone down slightly, but has eroded a bit of YouTube's market share. Either way, both of those platforms remain super important for targeting teens, if that is part of our strategy. But both Shorts and Reels have seen significant user upticks. So Shorts is something that certainly I myself need to spend more time focusing on Shorts, given all of the opportunity that I often talk about on Shorts. I need to spend more time on the platform. But Reels in particular, and we'll talk more about Reels, the meta effects is really starting to play out with Reels. So Reels are growing substantially as a content format overall, but also you can start to see that they're starting to eat into TikTok's dominance here, and that's having some really interesting implications for our strategy moving forward. We'll talk more about Reels later on, but yeah, I'm going to pause here, let you get your
I just think this is really interesting, and even though I think if we were to watch our sessions back, we've been talking about this for probably 18 months. This is really quite significant, what a shift we've seen. And I've seen this in some data as well around existing followers watching this kind of content, and also attracting non-followers using short form video content as well is really interesting. We've seen some feature changes around this, around trying to have it more engaging. But in terms of the kind of engaging with teens, that is getting harder. There is more restrictions. You can't advertise to some of these age groups as well. And I think it's about media consumption, isn't it, and scrolling and entertainment and what they're watching. So it's obviously got a very clear role to play.
Definitely.
And this is why.
yeah, exactly. I think that previous slide really shows kind of the underpinning dynamics around what's happening here. And it was only going to be a matter of time, because the meta machine is a very, very powerful one, right? You've got 4 billion users across all of your different apps. They're near enough. You really can turn the taps on for any feature that you want to steal and replicate the success of, whether it's stories, whether it's Reels in this instances, whether it's Clubhouse, if anyone remembers that still, even though that diminished somewhat. But either way, they have huge capability in both replicating and making a success of. So Reels is the next one of that. 50% of all the time users spend on Instagram is about Reels. And really, whilst, woe be it to me to recommend to suggest exactly what people need to do as part of their strategy, but clearly, if we want to grow on Instagram in 2024, we absolutely need to be leaning into Reels. And I don't think that's breaking news, but clearly they're going to continue to push it hard, because it is eroding all that market share that TikTok has started to take away from them, and they're slowly getting it back. So they're not going to stop pushing it anytime soon.
Yeah.
Any other take on that one?
This is an interesting one for me, because I think about myself as a user, and take a different view of it. I don't actually spend a huge amount of time watching Reels personally, but it does make me think about, there was some data, I think it's from insider.io earlier this year, I was looking at when I was presenting on something around the difference between TikToks and Reels and engagement. And also there was different stats around the size of your account, and how kind of smaller accounts were doing better in Reels versus larger accounts were doing better on TikTok. So again, I like to kind of see some stuff behind this, but I mean, 50% of the time on Instagram, what would have happened if they hadn't have, copied TikTok and added this feature onto it?
Yeah, exactly. Right then, you want to take us through some new features?
New features, as we said, there's not so many this month, and some of them are fairly self-explanatory, so we don't need to dwell on many of them. But if we start off with Instagram, what have we got? adding collaborators to Instagram broadcast channels. So broadcast channels are the one-to-many kind of town hall feature. It was rolling out. I think my notifications around join my broadcast channel have stopped now. You know, when something's rolling out and everyone starts doing something and then everyone starts posting that they've had enough of a new feature. I've followed a few people on their broadcast channels, switched some of them off, got a bit too much for me personally. But I think the idea is there if you can find a use case for one-to-many conversations. And we have talked many times about actually the importance of collaborating, how that is useful for both parties getting involved and partnerships, etc. So I think adding that feature into a broadcast channel is a good thing.
If we thought about this, Luan, you and I should probably have a broadcast channel. Now we can have collaborators. Like,
let's do it.
Perfect for our use case.
Yeah.
But also I think probably more importantly for everyone on this call, and you've called out already, like going ahead and finding those people that are in your space that have those broadcast channels gives you that opportunity to extend the reach of whatever you're marketing. I think that's what like the future of like I don't want to say influencer marketing, but because it just feels me a bit ick. But anyway, it's like working with others to help co-promote your whatever it is that you're selling. I think broadcast channels gives us another opportunity for that. So finding those and working with those folks, super useful. Sorry, I end up talking loads about this.
No, it's fine. I think there's a point that you made there about sometimes we get so involved in what we're already doing, and I've written down one of my Christmas New Year task lists is actually to seek out new people to follow, increase my inputs, because I think sometimes we don't spend time doing that. We just kind of go through the feeds that we've already got. So finding what other people are doing and increasing that is a good way to learn and get new ideas as well. So that's a big action point for me to take away and find some more broadcast channels. Definitely. What was the next one?
Like that.
Tagging broadcast channels in feed posts. Obviously, if you're doing broadcast channels and then you can promote them, that's a good thing. So they're obviously integrating this feature as well. Maybe it's a bit of a shift and taking learnings from groups and how groups have worked really well on Facebook and shifting those over to Instagram.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that we spoke about this last month, and just to think about like the real reason that Instagram are doing this is because they've seen a big drop in people sharing in the feed. So they need to find other ways. So whether it's stories, which obviously works very well, we know all about that, whether it's stories or whether it's more kind of private sharing, like broadcast channels are, that's a really important step for Instagram to help people keep people on the platform, keep people creating, but reduce the kind of fear and anxiety that sometimes comes with posting in a feed.
Yeah. Highlighting post replies in Instagram stories. This one, this came up after I'd had a really interesting team conversation about, who comments on things and who gets involved, and do we just like things, or, again, do we need to be more conscious about commenting and replying and getting involved? And then there was a feature that you can pull those replies into Instagram stories. So I think it's about making stories more interactive, isn't it?
Definitely. A great way of like building those relationships with the people that you really want to get closer to potentially. So replying to those comments, I like it a lot.
Yeah. Instagram allows for boosting of posts you've been mentioned in. I was a little bit concerned about this, and this made me think about making sure that you go in and check your privacy settings and knowing what you're sharing and who you're sharing it with. Most of the time, I'd probably say this is a really cool thing. If I'm collaborating with someone or working with someone and they happen to mention me and allowing them to boost it, great. But I don't know about anyone else. I often get tagged into things as a hidden mention into kind of spam posts or get involved with this kind of post as well. So I wouldn't want to be boosted in that kind of spam content. So one to look out for.
This is why it's good doing this session with you, Luan, because you think about the implications and stuff where I'm like, I love it. Great idea. Why wouldn't you? Growth. You know, it's a really, really important point you call out, actually. So either way, you now have control over this.
Control is the key point. Yeah, perhaps I'm always a bit more cautious because I have had situations of being tagged into things mentioned and copyright issues being breached. Another conversation. This is interesting, and we have flagged Amazon a couple of times throughout the year in terms of our updates, and are they becoming more social, and what are they doing? Instagram entering a partnership with Amazon. I'd like to know who instigated this and which side it's coming from. Link into your Amazon account about starting to kind of share your purchases, or sharing so that people can feedback and give you recommendations on something that you might be looking at.
And I think possibly the bigger thing here is that Instagram Shops hasn't exactly worked.
Yeah.
It hasn't manifested, and social shopping hasn't quite taken off in the way that we were discussing in like end of 2020, beginning of 21, right? Because everyone had seen what ByteDance had been doing in the US, so parent company of TikTok. And the growth that is happening in China with social shopping, it's all about like live stream shopping, etc. And that was going to be the future of like social commerce and e-commerce in general. So naturally, all of the networks throughout the course of 21 to 23 fell over themselves to like, oh, we're implementing, you remember, Luan, like every month we were talking about, oh, new social shopping, you can tag this product, etc. But that seems to have kind of petered out from what I could tell. Instagram have absolutely like rode back on their like push towards shops. So it looks like they're working really more with like established parties. So if you already like sell products on Amazon, then it becomes much easier for you to kind of link that to your Insta account, and for people to purchase directly through Amazon and have that happen directly in the feed. So really it's kind of like, it's still social shopping, but I think Instagram realized the power of Amazon and not really fancying taking them on. That's my take on this.
I mean, I think we've seen changes to the social media platforms over the last year where they have kind of stepped back on changes that they made during the pandemic and lockdowns, if we remember that. So yeah, there was a big push on social shopping, wasn't there, when physical stores were shut. And they obviously looked at the data and made decisions around what was working. I'm not sure about linking it with my Amazon. I don't see Amazon as a social media platform or needing to integrate it into my social networks. But in terms of shopping, I certainly respond to ads. So maybe that's where the link comes through. Notification stickers. So this is a bit like the bell on LinkedIn, isn't it? You know, ring my bell to get more, you know, see what I'm doing first. Followers can turn notifications on with the stickers. It's just, again, it's trying to get people to interact and to come back. Sharing feed posts and reels with close friends. This has again been another bit of a trend. We've seen some of this, and it reminds me, if anyone remembers, I think I said this before, about kind of Google Plus and how they had the concept of circles and being able to share certain posts with certain groups. And this brings us to, you know, the trend that we're seeing and hearing around less content being public and for everyone, and actually, you know, smaller groups and behind the scenes. And wasn't it that you can now have up to 4 profiles on Facebook, so you can be, you know, have 4 different worlds of your hobbies and interests. And I guess some people can do that on with their content as well. Editing tools, we always like new editing tools, don't we? Fonts, text to speech, voices, I think that's really important as well, that they keep developing these apps as well so that we can do more and do different things with them. GIF clips. I'm not a big user of GIFs, but we know that the platforms are using them. I think you can now respond to comments with GIFs as well. So making it easier for you to create GIFs and add clips, another editing tool.
Just as a kind of narrative on this too, is, you know, Reels have always been behind the curve when it comes to like editing tools versus TikTok, right? Because you can make really cool looking TikToks. You can obviously use similar owned tools by ByteDance, right? So things like CapCut you can just use and, you know, create whatever you need for TikTok. But that has always limited the growth of Reels, because when you don't have the right editing tools, all you end up doing is just editing it on TikTok and then posting it to Insta, which we know doesn't work very well. So now they're starting to catch up with the editing tools, and the integration of these drafts and templates and this clip hub as well as all the stuff that you just mentioned, really starts to close the gap. And once again, it just gives us another take that how much effort that Insta are putting into Reels and developing it as a content format, which is really important for us to know. Anyway, back to you, Luan.
You love the insight. So, this is separating initial plays from replays. So not just the kind of initial 3 seconds and then the full watch, but people watching it again and again. I think this is an interesting addition.
Yeah, and it defines the success of your post, and it defines how much your reel is going to be reshown, so how much reach you're going to get. Replays is a super important metric. So now, instead of change this metric, you might see your reporting change, and your plays might look different. Overall plays might look different because they've broken it down, as you just say, Luan. But that retention chart, super useful as we kind of look back at our content over 2023 and think about what 2024 is going to look like. And especially if you're doing short form video, look at the stuff that's generated the most replays, look at that audience retention curve, so you can kind of optimize for that, because the more replays you get, the further your reel or TikTok will go.
Downloading Reels clips. So I think this again is a setting, and if it's a publicly set option, then people can now download Reel clips. I'm guessing this is so they can share them. I don't know if they're putting them elsewhere or putting them on websites or anything else.
Trying to get them on TikTok, basically, I think.
Possibly.
But yeah, if you really don't want your content downloaded, you can disable it.
Switch
so
it off.
Just pay attention to that one.
Yeah. Facebook. What have they been up to? So this is interesting. So ad-free Facebook and Instagram is now live. So this is the option where you can pay to not have ads displayed. As I said earlier, some of this is due to kind of data regulations that are changing, that they're introducing this. They're saying until March the 1st, the initial subscription covers all linked accounts. I think I read somewhere that you might have to pay for Instagram and Facebook separately. It's not a one account fits all situation. So I think we talked about this last time. Do pop in the chat. Are you going to pay for an ad-free? However, if you are an advertiser, you cannot have an ad-free account. It will not let you advertise, I believe, if you have an ad-free account. So as marketers, we're probably stuck.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how this will pan out over 2024. They have to, the EU regulation is forcing them to do it. They wouldn't do this otherwise, I don't think. But given, like, if you look at the kind of call to action and how they're positioning it, they're trying to make people not subscribe for it. So whether people hate ads enough to pay, it's going to be very interesting to see. Until this comes, like any subscription comes with increased reach and visibility, I'm personally not interested.
But it's I didn't do it on Facebook and Instagram, but on a social media platform, I recently switched my location because I was experimenting with something, and I switched my location, and for 24 hours I had an ad-free feed on the platform, obviously while it was kind of, circulating through or looking for new ads or something, and it felt so strange to not have any ad content in my feed. After 24 hours it was all back, but I literally had this free zone, which it felt strange.
Strange good, strange bad?
Well, the reason I did it was because I was looking for ad examples from the country that I was switching to, so I was kind of like, what's happening? Why am I not getting served stuff? But I don't know, just the context of the feed felt different, not having content that was outside of my kind of chosen organizations and individuals.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Maybe experiment is the tip with all of this. Experiment with what's going on in your own news feeds. Creating reels from existing Facebook video clips. Isn't this just another way to edit and use existing content and repurpose? How many of us all have a phone full of short video clips, long video clips, and being able to edit? So another option. A/B testing for organic Facebook posts. Now, if anyone's ever advertised, and we don't talk about advertising very much, that has always been in there. We are big advocates of testing. A/B testing means that you're always testing just one variable at a time against a control, so you can see what the difference is. Being able to do this on organic Facebook posts, I think it could potentially be a little bit of a game changer in terms of, actually looking and seeing the difference and getting into a testing mindset.
Yeah, because we talk about, when you in particular talk about experimentation a lot, and experimenting on social is actually impossible because you'll never replicate the exact
environments. Yeah.
So this is our best chance of replicating the conditions of, like, I posted this image of a dog at this time on this channel. The only variation here is the caption, and they'll all be served, an audience will be served an equal amount. And you'll be able to see what the winner was, and they get automatically, as you see, whichever gets the most plays in the first 30 minutes is the winner and we served. So one, great for impact of our content, and also so good for learning. So raving about this one.
Yeah, I'd like to play with that one. Discoverability. This is something that we have talked about a lot throughout the year, I feel, in terms of how important social media is for search, that it's overtaking search engines, but also been talking about creators and how valuable they are becoming to the platforms, how there are more creator features helping with monetization. So I think kind of supporting creators is a big shift. And I think it's important for us to think about how influencers and creators are not one and the same. Influencers can be creators, but not all creators are influencers. If you followed that along, I've kind of been trying to define this and work this out, that we have now got user-generated content, paid for content creators as well, and it is different from people that are monetizing their audiences versus people that are creating content. And that is quite a shift, I think, and something that we need to kind of understand a bit more, especially if we start to look at actually what features are available for creators and supporting them, and if we want to work with them over the next year.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, yes, like working with creators, again, super important, especially because Facebook are leaning into them big time. Because if they set these tasks that people know, and badges that people need to achieve, kind of gamifying experience of like doing your reels, regularly doing it, basically building a habit. And if you complete all of the steps, like it says at the top here, Facebook will reward you with increased reach of your content. And that is, I don't need to tell you that, massive. Like, that is ridiculous. Like, the fact you can complete some steps and then your content will be pushed further. Absolutely huge. So that's going to mean substantial things for like attracting creators to Facebook. So yes, working with, building up the network of people you're going to work with. And really, if I had to invest in any 2024 content strategy, well, and I am doing this, is that I'd be building up the amount of people that I could work with, people that might have broadcast channels or creating on Facebook or Facebook groups or on Nextdoor or Reddit. Anywhere. It takes some effort. Yes, you'll have a big chunky Excel spreadsheet by the end of it, but oh my God, that will be so worth your time. So yeah, and it just gets undervalued typically. So this is, I don't want to overstate this, but this is massive.
Creators. And improving insights for creators as well, which if you're wanting to work with them, you are going to want to know their data and have them report on working with them. So giving them those insights that they can put in their media packs and share with you and see what's working well for their audiences as well, so that they can learn and perform better. We like insights.
We do.
And a new subscribe button for creators. So I think we're seeing this a bit more, aren't we, with this kind of notification bell and subscribe, that perhaps giving us a bit more control and input into what we're seeing in our feeds, because we've seen that big shift to kind of the for you feed and serving what they think we want to know, but actually giving us some options to really tell the platforms what we want from them. Share to threads feature. I know that we've got this coming up again later. They're really pushing threads, aren't they, across Instagram and Facebook? Is that possibly all that we need to say? That we are seeing more and more threads in our Facebook and our Instagram feeds. I don't know how I feel about that. We could talk about threads probably later. We said we didn't have much to talk about and we're still flying through. Adding alt text options. For me, this is so important. I am now spending more time talking to clients on my training courses, in my own work, making sure of accessibility. alt text, video captions, all that kind of, good practice. This has to be there now. It is something that you need to think of and be very aware of, but now Threads is on desktop. Accessibility should have been baked in from the beginning. It has been an add-on, but at least it is coming. X. Let's dive through this quickly. We don't need to talk about what Elon Musk has been up to in the news over the last 24 hours. We will just dive into the fact that, are we surprised there is an AI-driven chatbot, his own, coming to X, which I think he announced, wasn't it, like the day after the AI Safety Summit or something, where he did his interview with Rishi about what was going to happen and that jobs wouldn't exist anymore. And then he launched his own AI-driven chatbot.
Interesting. I haven't played with it yet, but
No.
I think it's opening up to everyone very, very soon.
LinkedIn. So let's talk about LinkedIn. LinkedIn adding more AI content features. This is if you have a premium account. If you have a premium account, you are, if it's like mine, seeing more AI updates. So as and when I try and do something, it's like, oh, would you like some AI help with that? This one is about giving you a summary of articles that are on LinkedIn. So the collab articles that are appearing, longer articles that are appearing, an AI tool is summarizing this for you, so you don't have to read it all. Job fit analysis coming to LinkedIn. This is useful if you are seeking a job at the moment, that you could, on a premium account, again, get some feedback from an AI tool to say how well your LinkedIn profile matches the job description. So if you are job seeking at any point in time, it is absolutely important that your LinkedIn profile is up to date, reflects job descriptions, mirrors language, etc. So if you are in that position at the moment, it may be worth considering a short-term upgrade to premium so that you get those AI supporting tools.
Alrighty.
TikTok.
Not too much for TikTok, only one, but quite an important one. Customize your For You feed. TikTok has been magical with its algorithm. Not for all the right reasons, it's fair to say, but they've put some incredible stuff in their black box of tricks. But now you can have a little more control over it. You won't be able to know what's happening inside that black box, but at least you can have a bit of more control. So you can be more specific about the things that you want to see. So I think that's really important in the age of control. And I think all of the networks are really starting to feel a lot of the pressure of regulators and regulation incoming to give people more control, access to their data, protection from ads, that kind of stuff. So either way, I think this would be useful. Great for us. Whether many people will actually do it, I'm not too sure. I think it's probably just a nod to say, hey, regulators, we're doing our bit. Let's talk about the rest. So sorry, Luan, I just literally just
no, that's fine.
Basic analytics tools come to Threads. I'm sure lots more will be coming, but now at least we can have some sort of like quantifiable metric as to whether our posts are doing well, likes, reposts, quotes. Don't need to explain this one. Super simple. Curious to know whether anyone on this call is actually starting to use Threads regularly. I'm an infrequent user of Threads. Don't see tremendous engagement currently, but that might well be content rather than platform. So curious to know, like, Luan, are you doing anything on Threads?
Not at the moment. I was just trying to see if I could add something to the chat, because I saw a brilliant image this morning that I'll just kind of read it out. It was a pie chart. I saw this shared on my feed, and it's a pie chart with different sections that says people saying Threads is back, people asking if Threads is still a thing, confused Instagram people taking Threads seriously, which was small, and then another chunk that just said, excuse my language, brands arsing about. So for me, that chart kind of, I think, summarized where people are at with Threads. I personally have always felt that until it comes to a social media management platform and scheduling and is, integrated with the tools we're already using, it is one of those kind of conscious, oh, let me go and check Threads, let me go and see what's there. But I am actually seeing a lot more activity and kind of conversation on there. So I think some people are making a very conscious effort to build a presence on there at the moment.
Definitely want to keep an eye on. And it looks like they will be enabling access to scheduling tools, which will make me very happy very soon, actually. So yeah, let's stay close to that one. Post discovery, yeah, Facebook. Basically, Threads, Meta are doing two things. They're pushing everyone to create as many reels as possible, and they're also showing Threads everywhere they can, every single surface, every touch point. Oh, put it on Threads. Did you know about Threads? Maybe you want to know about Threads. Happens everywhere. So either way, it gives you an idea as to how much effort and emphasis they're starting to put onto it. So definitely something to continue staying pretty close to, maybe experimenting with, because, you know, like Luan and I always say, it's like, when you start to see this much effort and energy going into a feature, you realize that they're taking it real seriously, which will mean that content naturally has an opportunity to bubble up to the top. So we shall see. Now you can pin posts. I think a lot of the kind of feature debt, which I describe on Threads, they launched a very basic product initially, but as you can see, so much more coming. So, you know, alt text, whether it's like pinned post, whether it's analytics, you're starting to see a much more fully baked out product, as well as, like, you know, all of the scheduling integrations, which will be coming real soon. So yeah, Threads is starting to become a little more mainstream in its feature set, which will, you know, help its growth too. Ad-free is happening on other platforms too. Snapchat's probably been the most successful one with their kind of Snapchat Plus subscription. These ad-free monthly plans are quite expensive. Whether this will become a thing, only time will tell. I think this is definitely something we'll be tracking very closely over 2024. And I think we've got two more things to show you, because we're nearly at the end. Follow account in search results. So this is a screenshot from a Google search result. So only recently did we really start to see Google display more social content in search results, like TikTok videos and individual social channels as well. And it's always been a bit of a walled garden, social media. So we've always thought like social and SEO are two different things. The world of social, like search and search/SEO and social is just becoming more interlinked. So it's a really, really interesting one to watch. So now followers are included in this, as much as I usually argue against follow account being a significant metric, you know, and even though Google is saying content in the feed and the search results are not ranked by follow account, it's pretty clear that if you see someone with 4 followers and someone with 104,000 followers, you're typically going to see the one with more as more trustworthy. So yeah, I think there's a lot more to come around search and social. It's a really interesting thing to watch. And then finally, a For You feed is coming to YouTube. Will work exactly like TikTok, probably not as smart as TikTok, but again, we mentioned Shorts earlier, and Shorts continues to grow as a content format. So unsurprisingly, YouTube are finding other ways to push that and steal as much attention away from TikTok as possible. And with 10 minutes to go, we actually made it. Let's summarize it. I think we've encapsulated this as we've spoken through it. But just if there's, you know, if you switched off from my boring voice over the last kind of 50 minutes or so, take away these 4 things. Social media is changing. It's changing at its most rapid pace than I've noticed in a long time, actually. Decline of feed post sharing. We spoke about ad-free subscriptions, whether that's just a nod to impending regulation or whether this is actually going to be a thing, jury's out. But those kind of niche communities as well that you spoke about earlier, Luan, start to be like a very significant thing. Maybe we're just entering an age where we're thinking smarter. We're thinking beyond just broadcasting to a feed. We're thinking a little bit smaller and more fragmented in the way that we do social. So difficult when you're managing social, for sure, but does provide more opportunity, I think. Reels growing quickly. We spoke about that, recovering ground to TikTok, and more and more features, so much effort and energy. If we want to grow on Insta and Facebook, Reels is the way to do it. And creators on Facebook, again, that really is the thing that Facebook are leaning into. They know that it's a declining platform because less people are sharing on the platform, less news consumption, all that kind of stuff. But what they are trying to do is gather back that lost momentum by leaning into creators, giving them the incentivized of increased reach, etc. So yeah, pay very close attention to those that are building communities on Facebook. And Threads, it's climbing, it's growing, but I think your pie chart is a brilliant example. We need to link.
I put it in the chat.
Perfect. Yeah. So Whether that will play out, who knows? I wouldn't be orientating my content strategy into threads first for 2024, but I would expect threads to feature quite heavily in the first part of 2024. And with that, I'm going to stop talking and see questions.
We don't have any questions. I think everyone's just listening because this is such a fast-paced conversation and so much to share. So we don't have any questions in there, but we always do welcome questions. Please do pop them in right now if you can type very quickly. Connect with myself and Andy on LinkedIn. Send us questions afterwards if something comes up. We really appreciate those of you that tune in, month out to watch this. If you are new to watching it, then welcome. Thank you for joining us today for the first time. There's lots of comments coming in here now. As we said, we will be back in January. We will keep doing this every month for you next year and rounding up all the information, but we will be moving over to LinkedIn Live, which will just look a little bit different to this now. Andy, thank you. The year has gone quickly again as we round up. It feels a little bit too early to say Happy Christmas, but I hope everyone does get a break over Christmas and New Year, or however you're celebrating.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, just echoing everything you just said, Luan. Thanks everyone for all your support and encouragement. With what we do it for. So anything that we can do to help you guys, help us all like understand the crazy world that we all operate in. So yeah, thank you for making this feel like a little community here. So anything that we can do to help, do let us know. But otherwise, yeah, we'll speak to you very soon.
Take care, everyone. Bye.